Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to cover this story because I feel it's very important to understand where things are heading, and this makes me very concerned that women-only spaces, women-only nights where they exclude men is going to be a thing of the past because it's seen as bigotry, it's seen as, some sort of phobic these days. And I just feel that a lot of companies, a lot of organizations are shying away from women-only nights. I'm seeing a lot of examples of that now. Things like ladies' nights at the gym or at the swimming pool. A lot of places seem to want to move away from that now, and it's very concerning. So this story is about Glassdoor, a homeless charity in London. They proposed that they were going to have a women's night where they literally take women off of the street and give them a safe place for the night. And that was called, women's only. However, when people dug a little deeper, it turns out that it's open to biological males who identify as women. And this sparked outrage. A lot of women rights campaigners came forward and said how they were outraged at this situation. Because the fact is, if you attend something that's supposed to be women's only, women have a right to have an expectation that they're only going to see women there. Not biological males who try to present themselves as women, but women. Naturally born females. We have a right to that expectation when something is labelled ladies' night or women only. If something is labelled women only, it should only be for women. Now, if you have a trans women's night or, a night for everybody that's open to you, no matter how you identify or, how you were born, that's fine. But when you label something that's only supposed to be for women, that means something to people, especially to women. It means something to us. And to say that you want to be inclusive, you don't want to discriminate, but yet discriminate against women who have an expectation that this is only for women, that's hypocrisy right there, if you ask me. And this is why language is important. Definition of words. Radical leftists are trying to change definitions of words. They're trying to change the definition of a woman for this very reason. So I fear that in the future, women only this, women only that is going to be a thing of the past. They may use the same label, but it's not going to mean what it says. So let's take a look at the story. So campaigners slam cruel decision to allow biological men who self-identify as female into women-only shelter. Women's rights campaigners have slammed the cruel decision to allow biological men who self-identify as female into a women-only shelter. This winter, London homeless charity Glassdoor will run its first women's night shelter as an emergency provision for the escalating number facing homelessness while temperatures drop. But the warm, safe space will be for all people who identify as women, the charity revealed as they launched a new service. That means it's not going to be out of the realm of possibilities to see a bearded man in the shelter, because if he says he identifies as a woman, you're a bigot if you question that. And that's all it takes. This criteria is left pretty vague, or basically left with one qualifier: those who identify as a woman. Pretty open if you ask me. And to say you're providing a warm, safe space for women, but yet you allow biological men into the shelter, some women are not going to feel they're in a safe space, in a women's only space, if there are biological men there. And that's not to demonize men in general, because I don't want people to get the wrong idea when I talk about these sort of topics. It's not to say that every man is a predator or, should be looked at with suspicion. This is about definition of words. This is about doing what's right. If you call something women only, women have the right to expect that. Otherwise, don't call it that. Say you're open to everybody, no matter how you identify. Otherwise, it's misleading. The group also run a men-only and a mixed gender space, which will be able to house 105 every night. In line with our gender, equality and diversity policy, any guest who identifies as a woman will be treated in line with their gender identity and will be eligible for a space in our women-only shelter, depending on availability, Glassdoor told The Telegraph. It's just open to anybody who says they identify as a woman. And we're talking about homelessness, So women on the street are very vulnerable, as you can imagine, more vulnerable than other groups of people. So to have a space where it's women only, I'm sure a lot of them depend on that. I'm sure a lot of them, really value that. And now to be told, in the name of inclusivity, in the name of virtue signaling, we're going to say that anybody who identifies as a woman is also welcome. Never mind how that makes the biological women feel. Never mind whether that actually makes them feel less safe. That doesn't matter, as long as we're inclusive, as long as we can virtue signal. And that's why campaigners have labelled this cruel. So yes, the move has been slammed by campaigners who blasted the policy as cruel and pleaded with the charity to backtrack and protect women-only spaces. A women's shelter that accommodates men who identify as women ceases to be a women's shelter. Director of Advocacy at Sex Matters, Helen Joyce, told the paper, "Gaslighting vulnerable women in this way is among the cruelest examples of how organisations are prioritising the feelings of men over the fundamental safety and well-being of women." Glassdoor needs to scrap this policy and reassess why the shelter was set up in the first place. The charity also says that self-identifying women will be allowed to their women's group, a place where they say women guests have been able to come together and relax, sharing tea, biscuits, activities, and their own experiences, safe in the knowledge that this is a women-only space. I'll say that again. For homeless women, women-only space means something. It really means something. Knowing that these women are vulnerable, knowing that they have less means to protect themselves while out on the streets, it's not going to be as easy for them to fight back if anybody was to try and take advantage of them and try and attack them. They're in a more vulnerable position. Knowing all of that, they still want to mess around with the term women only. It is cruel to me. Absolutely it is. Activities run by Glassdoor for homeless and vulnerably housed self-identifying women during these sessions include arts and crafts, relaxing in a women-only space, speaking to women caseworkers for support, and accessing showers. The one time you can get a nice warm shower as a homeless person who lives on the streets, you now have to worry about a friggin' man being there. And if you're not okay with that, you're a bigot. You're probably not welcome if you're not okay with that. You can stay on the streets. I didn't even think about that. This is also, it's not just a bed to sleep at night, it's a place to shower, change into some cleaner clothes. And you have to now worry about somebody who identifies as a woman, who is essentially a man, being in the same space. It doesn't make any sense. Oh, but we want to be inclusive. We don't want to reject anybody because of their identity. Because if they identify this way, we should embrace that. But you're okay with offending the women. You're okay with misleading the women. You're okay with putting them in a vulnerable position when it's supposed to be a safe space. Here we go again, where the wants and desires of certain groups supersedes the rights of women. So in 2021, they found that 640 people were believed to be sleeping rough on London streets, and 13% of these people are women. The charity has advocated for women specifically. It's lobbied Parliament to make safer conditions for women who are homeless. And then they turn around and do this. So they provide caseworkers for self-identifying women. They ask them specifically, would you prefer a female caseworker? And that's resources being taken away from biological females, because a woman might have a particular interest in having a female caseworker, but she's going to be busy working with the biological male, I guess. Now, again, anybody who is homeless, I welcome them being given help, whether they're trans, biological female, whatever they identify as. I welcome, charities that help these people, regardless of their background. But again, definitions matter. People rely on these definitions, especially vulnerable women who are on the streets. They rely on these definitions, and I'm sorry, you're going to have to basically not call it women only. You're going to have to call it something else. And if you want to be inclusive, have a more open category for the other groups, But for women who are vulnerable, who have enough to deal with, let women only mean women only. So we have Kelly J. Keane, who's very much, advocates for women, for females, and who has had her life threatened multiple times just for saying that women deserve to speak and say how they really feel. Just for saying that, she's been threatened and all sorts. So Kelly Jane Keane, founder of Standing for Women, called Glassdoor's decision harmful, adding that the shelter had chosen the validation of men over the safety of women. She said, "The women's sector has been parasitically invaded by this pernicious, women-hating cult. And so it comes as no surprise to me that yet another service, supposed to be looking after the most vulnerable women, has turned their back on them. The blood, sweat, and tears of women in decades gone by who created the spaces has been thrown back in their faces. It's an absolute disgrace. One could argue that they have no choice, or that they are too imbecilic to understand the exceptions and exclusions provided by the Equality Act. But that's just not good enough. Either this women's shelter stands by vulnerable women and provides a space in which they may escape and recover, or it allows men. This will with absolute certainty cause untold harm to women, and they will just self-exclude from this service. I feel nothing but contempt for women who portray women with the greatest needs." And that's fact. Some women may not have a problem with it and go to women's only night regardless. But there are going to be those, and I believe many, who won't go because of this rule that they have. They won't go because they won't feel safe. They won't feel that it's appropriate. They'll rather stay on the streets than go to a night where there's going to be men who identify as women. Are these men going to be vetted? No, because that would be bigotry. So yeah, there's going to be those who are going to just not go. And I don't blame them. But that denies them a warm bed for the night. But those are women that are going to be alienated. Those are women who aren't going to feel comfortable coming. And to this shelter, I guess that doesn't matter to them. And that's a real shame. When you claim to be a charity, that includes helping vulnerable women, but yet you're okay with having a policy that is going to turn those vulnerable women away, that's going to make them uncomfortable to come and use your resources. So we had Jess Phillips, the DV minister, call upon Keir Starmer to make sure that women's spaces are incorporated into law, that this terminology actually means women spaces, women only, to make the definition clear under the law. Miriam Crates, a Conservative MP, said, "It appears that Glassdoor is yet another well-meaning organisation that does not understand the Equality Act. Men who identify as women should not be denied access to services on that basis of their trans status, but that doesn't give them the legal right to be treated as if they were female. Women need single-sex spaces like this shelter, and such services are protected by law." Absolutely. When the Equality Act was written, it was written to include women, not men who identify as women. It doesn't extend to that. Unless you change it and say it now extends to biological men who identify as women, God forbid. Where it mentions women, that's exactly what it means. Women, by the definition, the actual definition of women. So again, if you ask me, this is going against the law. It's not in line with the Equality Act. If you say something is women only, it should only be for women. To say that it includes men who identify as women, that's outside of the scope of this act. You're making things up. You're adding your own spin to it. Your own wokeified spin to it. And if anything, that is discrimination against women. Because you're taking something that was meant to protect them and you're now applying it to men. So yeah, it's actual discrimination. And they need to be called out on this. They need to be held accountable. Because this charity, it has a duty of care to women too. Especially when you welcome in women and say that you can come and stay in our buildings and use our resources. You have a duty of care. And it's reckless to now leave them open and more vulnerable when it's supposed to be a safe space. So let me know what you think. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourselves, and God willing, I will see you in the next video.